When you think of Netflix, the things that come to mind are probably Stranger Things, Breaking Bad, Wednesday, or if you're a nerd like me, One Piece. These are all admittedly pretty good shows, but today I wanted to talk about one that kind of flies under the radar for most people, and it's called Pantheon. Also, a big spoiler warning for the story and ending of Pantheon. There are a lot of media that address the concept of uploaded intelligence, which is basically taking your monkey brain and putting it into a computer. Some that come to mind to me are Upload, Black Mirror, or like a video game like Soma. What I think Pantheon specifically does well is tackle the long-term impact that uploaded intelligence has. Throughout the show, we see its progression from when it's first invented, and by the end of the show, we're actually shown a world that's thousands of years in the future, although that's mostly the last episode, which I'll talk about later. At the beginning of the show, our protagonist is 14 years old, and she unfortunately recently lost her father to what's supposed to be cancer, I think. Anyways, in the first scene, we see Maddie in a classroom getting some pretty mean texts from her classmates when she sees all her classmates move in complete synchronicity. Later in the episode, when Maddie's at home, she's browsing the web on her dad's laptop when she gets a mysterious notification in the middle of the night. This mysterious user only communicates in emojis for some reason, but scene by scene it's actually revealed that this is Maddie's dad who somehow got his brain uploaded before he died or something. This is honestly one of my favorite parts of the show because throughout the series the writers do a really good job of making you feel like you're the one discovering truths about the world with Maddie instead of just watching her go about her life. One thing I want to gush about this show before we move on is it's supposed to take place sometime in the 2020s because in one scene one character actually mentions COVID. And I feel like most media pretends that COVID never really happened, especially the media that was released at the time that this show was. And I just found that to be a neat little addition. I also think it's a little weird that they're able to talk to each other on their laptops because when I was in high school, our laptops had almost every website with DMs blocked, but I think that's kind of getting a little too nitpicky. Eventually they find out that her dad is stored at this big tech company and they do eventually successfully jailbreak him as well. After they get back, they open up the discussion about whether or not it's the real David. Now, this brings up an interesting question as well. Are uploaded intelligence really human? Maddie, of course, thinks that it is her real dad because he looks and talks the same way. And Maddie's mom, Ellen, says that it can't be David because David is dead. Now, the show doesn't really offer a clear answer to this, and I am nowhere near qualified to answer a question of that magnitude, but I do think this is a great example of how the show turns existential questions into conflict between our main characters. This question about the humanity of UIs is a recurring one throughout the series, and a lot of interesting arguments are brought up about it. Again, I highly recommend watching this show if you haven't. It's on Netflix and just watch it. It is worth every moment of your time. The big conflict of the first season is between the three main UIs we follow, David, Lori, and Chanda. Lori was a woman that got into a car accident and Logarithms approached her about uploading, saying it was the best way to save her. She's also the one that helped jailbreak David from Logarithms. Now, we've talked about David and Lori, but Chanda is the most interesting UI in my opinion. Chanda was a businessman that worked for a specific company involved in uploading brains. His boss unfortunately uploaded him against his will in this extremely gory scene, and it literally gave me chills down my spine the first time I saw it. The way people are uploaded in this universe is that their brain is scanned and disintegrated chunk by chunk, and it is honestly super creepy, but also it's kind of thought-provoking at the same time. I mean, what if they had a way to scan people's brain without disintegrating it? Would there just be a copy of you living in the net and you'd still be walking around fine? I mean, it's super dystopian. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. Also, if you like this review, like and subscribe, and hit the bell. Please hit the bell. Please hit the bell, please. Anyways, Chanda was freed by this creature that we learn has a late-stage version of the Flaw, which is something that every UI has that makes it so that they are constantly degrading by using their energy. It's to be assumed that this mysterious UI was someone down on their luck that just got uploaded, but we have no idea who they are because they can't actually talk or, speak through text because of how degraded they are. Chanda does some pretty horrendous stuff throughout the series, and in this season he kills his old boss's family and gives the blueprints of the machine that scans brains to the governments of the world. Now, because all of the major governments and players in the world can now actually make UIs, there is a lot of sabotage that happens around the world, including, sabotage of automatic weapons, the stock market crashes, and a bunch of other things. Because of that, Lori wants to reveal UIs to the world. Chanda doesn't like that very much, but the season ends with David sending a message Lori made to any device with the screen explaining what UIs are and that they're just as human as the rest of us. Chanda tried very hard to stop it, and unfortunately David died in the process of sending the message. One character I've neglected to talk about so far is Caspian. Caspian is by far my favorite character in this show. He's actually a clone of this guy named Stephen Holstrom, who is definitely not this universe's version of Steve Jobs. Definitely not. The reason that Logarithm is raising Caspian is to cure the flaw that we talked about earlier. Stephen Holstrom unfortunately died before he'd be able to make the code, so their only hope was to see if Caspian could do it. Throughout the series, we see as Caspian discovers why he was made and how his fake family was really just raising him for their own gain. As I mentioned before, this show does a really good job of capturing exactly what the characters are feeling at any given time, which makes the experience all more entrancing. Again, if you haven't already, I really recommend you watch this show. Because the first season ended with the reveal of UIs to the public, in the second season we see how the world reacts to that information. Just like how I think the real world would, there are tons of protests supporting and denying the idea that UIs are really human. Now, the first thing that at least America does is shut down the internet, and honestly I think that's a pretty understandable reaction considering the potential power UIs have and what they've done so far with that power. Now, after some NPC weirdo follows Maddie into her house, Maddie is actually saved by one of Logarithm's employees, who actually turns out to be Caspian's old fake mom, who is actually Stephen Holstrom's ex-lover, which is this show, man. This show. Maddie then volunteers to come with her to Logarithm's because she believes she'd be of some use. When she gets to Logarithm's base, she finds that Caspian is actually already there working on integrity, which will be the thing that fixes the flaw with the UIs. Caspian does eventually create a solution to the flaw by combining the backups of David and Laurie. They test this cure on a backup of David's consciousness, and when it succeeds in curing the flaw, Stephen Holstrom's goons betray Caspian and Maddie and delete David's copy. They then proceed to a secret bunker where they scan Stephen Holstrom's frozen brain and use the cure on him. I swear when I watched this, I literally had a Jimmy Neutron brain blast moment. I mean, it just blew my mind. After the upload, Maddie and Caspian escape the room they were locked in with the help of their new friend, Mist. Mist is a new AI that's actually later revealed to be the cure that Caspian made. For the rest of the show, she also takes the form of Maddie's sister because she was made from David's upload. Similarly to the issue of are uploads still people, Maddie has a hard time wrestling with the question of whether or not Mist is really her sister or just a bunch of code. I told you, man, this show wrestles with some interesting questions, and that's just really another reason that I love this show so much. After returning home from the secret Logarithms lab, Maddie and Caspian embark on a journey to find someone suitable to give the cure to. The cure is actually more important than you might think because whoever gets the cure has essentially the ability to do whatever they want whenever they want because it prevents any burnout that accelerated the flaw beforehand. The first UI they visit to see if they're worthy of the cure is a US volunteer named Joey. Interestingly, Mist is hesitant to give Joey the cure because, in her words, every time she cures someone, something bad happens. To me, this statement is a result of Mist being both a new being and a child of two UIs. Because she has some innate understanding of the world, she knows what a bad thing is, but she doesn't understand that the reason the bad things are happening isn't because she's curing people, it's because she's only cured bad people so far. Even though Caspian decides he doesn't want Joey to have the cure, Joey's husband threatens to kill Caspian if he doesn't cure her, so eventually he caves and Mist cures Joey. Okay, so the next big thing that happens in the story is the government creates an anti-UI program called SafeSurf. The purpose of SafeSurf is to make people feel safer about having the internet back because SafeSurf was designed to detect and eliminate UIs. This seems like a big plot point now, but just wait until I tell you about the ending because the SafeSurf plot becomes absolutely insane. Anyways, the next big thing that happens in the story is that Holstrom decides to make a human virus in response to the UI antivirus. In my opinion, this virus is what gives the final fight its stakes. I mean, sure, a bunch of UIs fighting does have stakes too because it would have, people we know risking their digital lives, but in media, when the world is at stake, tensions are generally higher, and I find the idea of a 3D printed virus that would destroy humanity very scary. In response to the virus, Caspian decides that he needs to upload in order to fight Holstrom himself. I'm skipping a lot of the story here, but during the final fight, Caspian and Holstrom get caught by SafeSurf, and in that moment, Mist chooses to pause time for them and spends the next 20 years picking apart Caspian's code to remove the SafeSurf and to remove Holstrom from him. This moment acts like a time skip as the rest of the story picks up from where Mist wakes Caspian up. Mist also looks like this anime girl now for some reason, but just so you know, that is Mist. So basically, this point in time is the ideal scenario with uploaded intelligence. It's normalized for people to upload themselves if they so choose, and people who are uploaded essentially run the world because they can do anything and they had lots of time to do it. There are even robot bodies they can transfer into in order to interact with the physical world. We haven't exactly reached peace yet though, because relationships with embodied humans and uploads are pretty tense. Maddie is also revealed at this point to be the counselor of negotiations for embodied humans as well. And embodied humans are pretty much just humans that still have their physical body, because the idea that uploaded intelligences are also human is pretty standard at this point, but they still need to be able to distinct between the two of them. Maddie has changed a lot over the 20 years, especially since she had her and Caspian's kid, who's actually 2 years older than Caspian at this point, so they don't really have the normal father and son dynamic. Now, despite Mist's best best efforts, Caspian unfortunately still has some of the safe surf code left in him, which means his time is still finite. Caspian's also having some trouble with his identity in this new world, and while he's taking some alone time, he's visited by David, who's Maddie's dad. This moment is admittedly pretty confusing because David's code was deleted from his test with Mist, but once we get into the ending, this will make more sense. Kinda. Because tensions are high in the world, Mist thinks Caspian can be the vessel in which people lower their arms and start understanding each other again. At the same time, Holstrom's last living grunt travels to where the Safe Surf virus is quarantined and takes it back into the world. He plans on uploading it to the data centers as an all-out attack on the UIs. Back to Caspian now, he's actually proven to be a very successful negotiator in talking with the embodied humans. Negotiations are stopped though when Safe Surf is uploaded into the net. Apparently, UIs are now immune to being consumed by Safe Surf, so instead of going after UIs, it decides to enter the robot bodies and start attacking embodied humans instead. See, Maddie and Caspian narrowly escape, but Dave, their son, is unfortunately killed in the process. Or is he? More on that later. But Caspian stops the Safe Surf threat by telling it to go into the stars and find new purpose for itself. He tells Safe Surf it doesn't need to abide by someone else's mission anymore. It seems like the mission appears to be why it was fighting humanity in the first place. Caspian, overtaken by the Safe Surf, says something that's completely bone-chilling while Maddie is on the floor lying with her dying son. He tells her not to be afraid and that Caspian and Dave are alive 117,000 years in the future. We then have another time skip, this one much bigger than the last one, and we are at that 117,000 year point. Apparently at this point in time, Maddie actually created a Dyson sphere, and a Dyson sphere is basically just a structure that captures a large percent of the sun's energy. Sometimes all of it, actually. It seems like she made this Dyson sphere in order to simulate the universes so that she could simulate her life in the duration of the series so far. She then plucks her dad out of the universe right before he died in the first season. So the ending of Pantheon is pretty much just Maddie becoming a computer god. Absolute cinema. Her goal here is to get Caspian and Dave back and pluck them out of their old worlds into hers. In this episode, we also see how David was able to go back and talk to Caspian long after he died, and supposedly he was sent by their universe's computer Maddie god. So I think it's supposed to be that there are other Maddies out there, and like the universe that the story took place in was just one of many. Honestly, I don't even know, to be honest. This ending was just super confusing to me. I get it more because it was my third watch of the series, but at the end of the day, I'm still kind of a himbo. If you have a different interpretation, please feel free to let me know in the comments. Maddie then enters this universe at the exact moment her son and Caspian died, revives her son with her computer powers, takes him into the internet as a UI, revives Caspian, and takes him into a separate world and asks him how he knew how long it would take to get there. If you're still with me here, like and subscribe. If you're just as confused as I am, like and subscribe too. Apparently he knew how long it would take because Safe Surf told him. So apparently Safe Surf became like God after shooting itself into space, and thanks Caspian for creating it. And after that, Maddie and Caspian enter one of the worlds and erase their memory. She also enters at what would be the start of the series, implying that that weird moment that happened at the start of the series was caused by Maddie all along. Now, if the ending made absolutely no sense to you, don't worry, because I've watched this show 3 times, like I said, and I'm still missing some of the nuances. Now that you have a general overview of the story, though, I want to talk about the parts I like and didn't like about this show, starting with the characters. I'm going to start with the main character, Maddie. Maddie is our main protagonist, and throughout the story, we see her from when she's 14 to when she's almost 118,000 years old. The story of Pantheon is at least partly a coming-of-age story, as we see Maddie grow up, and she's forced into many horrifying situations that no person, much less a kid, should ever have to endure. It's a repeating theme in the show that Maddie has to see her own loved ones die multiple times. First her dad, and then her dad again in season 1, and then her dad again when Miss cures him in season 2, and then Caspian, and then Dave. As a result of all of the repeated loss, she ends up finding the idea of digital life pretty revolting because she blames it for all the griefs she's endured over the years. That's why she decides to be the ambassador for embodied humans as well. When she eventually does decide to upload, she progresses humanity extremely out into the universe, and I think this is a great example of someone's potential being held back by their own pain. As you can see in the last few episodes, Maddie was being held back very far by her pain, and she was able to grow beyond it, and when she did great things. Overall, I think Maddie's a great character, and her sense of childlike wonder at the beginning of this series is kind of what brought many people into it, in my opinion. Next, let's talk about Caspian. Caspian is our secondary protagonist, and like I said before, he is my personal favorite character. The real growth that we see with Caspian over the course of the show is him discovering his self-identity, which is a key part of adolescence in anyone, not just clone brain children. Because he's a clone, though, he conflicts with the parts of him that are Stephen Holstrom and himself because he doesn't exactly know which is which. This is essentially the show writers playing with the concept of nature versus nurture, which is the idea that some of who we are is predestined explained by genetics, and some as a result of our environment. Because Caspian's environment and genetics were decided for him, he struggles with the idea that he's not a real person, just a copy. He states that once he finds out the truth, he ignores any canon event that happened in his life because he knows that they were most likely fake. I personally found it extremely satisfying watching him grow into himself over the show because it reminded me of what it was like growing up and being not sure of what my place in the world was. Pretty cool stuff. The next character I want to talk about is, of course, the big bad himself, Stephen Holstrom. I wouldn't say Holstrom necessarily as a character arc throughout the show, but I still found him to be a very compelling villain because of how devoted he was to his mission. He's a true embodiment of the ends justify the means, in that he's willing to do anything to see his vision become a reality. I mean, that's why he created Caspian and why he did all of the horrible things he did. Now, let's compare him with his real-world counterpart, Steve Jobs. Allegedly, Steve Jobs was not the nicest person, though I don't think he was evil to the extent that Holstrom was. Ultimately, they both wanted to produce change in the world and challenge the status quo. And though Holstrom's intentions were far more sinister, I still think he was a pretty faithful homage to that. Now, I'm not going to talk about all of the characters, but I did want to talk about one more before moving on, Maddie's mom. At the beginning of the show, her mom is introduced as someone who doesn't really buy into all of the upload stuff, but the reason she feels that way is because, similarly to Maddie, she feels that she lost David when he actually got uploaded. The reason I find her character so interesting is that by the time we get to the 20-year time skip, Ellen has reversed opinions and decided that uploading was actually the right decision for her. It's interesting to me because Maddie, who started the show as an upload enthusiast, has completely flipped sides and even refuses to let her son upload himself, which actually results in his death. I really liked this arc because they subverted our expectations by flipping the roles, even though Maddie did eventually cave and uploaded. There is one other good thing about the show I wanted to mention though, and that's the pacing. I think the length and pacing was absolutely phenomenal. I feel like a lot of other shows that are as good as this one squeeze out as many episodes as possible by putting a lot of filler in, and I think this show took the exact amount of time it needed to flesh out its characters and overarching story, and I didn't feel like I needed more when the show ended. That just felt like a rare occurrence these days, and I thought I'd mention it. Anyways, that's about all I had to say about the show. Again, if you haven't, I highly recommend you go on Netflix and watch it. There's a ton of existential stuff in here, and there was also a lot of plot points that I didn't get to because of time. Remember to like and subscribe, and have a good one.